Hello, welcome to the facts revealing the truth. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to do this again with you. Thank you so much for joining me. If this is your first time here, this is the facts revealing the truth. Here we don't just talk about facts, we reveal hidden messages that help you grow and become better. Before I proceed, I would like you to do me a small favor. If you're watching me on YouTube, just hit that subscribe button. If you're watching me on Facebook, do well to follow the page because I do not want you for any reason to miss future conversations like this. It's going to be valuable, it's going to be worth the while. Having said that, let's get the ball rolling. If I've been thinking of something lately, it's very important, very relative, and valuable to you. So pay attention. In a moment, I'm going to be sharing it. I've been thinking of something lately, and the more I think about it, the more fascinating it becomes. Have you noticed how small things can completely change the direction of your life? Yes, small things can completely change the direction of your life. Sometimes it could be a conversation, sometimes it could be a decision, other times it could be your daily habits, and sometimes it could be an opportunity. Something small happens today, and then years later, you look back and realize, oh, that was the moment, that was the turning point for my life. And then it got me thinking, could it be that life is more connected than we realize? Could it be that the small things we often ignore and often think doesn't matter are connected to much more better things in our lives? Now, think about this for a moment. A decision leads to a habit changes to a character influences a destiny, a conversation changes a relationship opens a door, one opportunity can change life. Everything connects to everything else. That's the truth. Everything in life connects to everything else. I first began to see this when I reflected on the words of two men who lived many centuries ago. The first man, Leonardo da Vinci, was an Italian genius whose work cuts across different spheres of life science, arts, and invention. He said, realize that everything connects to everything else. The second man was an English poet and a clergyman, John Donne, and he wrote, no man is an island entire of itself. No man is an island entire of itself. Think about that for a moment. Now, these men lived in different centuries, different eras, they had different profession, yet they came to one profound conclusion that everything is connected to everything else. How? The question is, how did these men who lived in different worlds, who experienced different things, come to such a united and profound conclusion that everything is connected? I think the answer is simple. They took the time to examine life. They stepped back from individual events to look at life on the whole. They looked beyond isolated moments and began to see how everything connects. In other words, they were able to examine the big picture. That's a beautiful phrase. But have you ever stopped to examine the big picture of your life? Have you ever stepped back to look at how your decisions, how your relationship, your failures, your successes, and your experiences are connected? Have you ever done that? Have you ever noticed how one small choice led to another, to another, to another, and eventually shaped where you are today? Because I recently did take a step back and examine life from a wider perspective, I realized three profound truths I'm going to be sharing with you today about the big picture. But before we get into that, let's answer a very simple question. What exactly is the big picture? For me, the big picture refers to the entirety of whatever you are doing, the entirety of whatever you are doing. For a student, the big picture is not just the assignment or the classes you attend. No, the big picture is more than that. It is the entirety of the education you are receiving. For a business person, the big picture is not just one sale, one profit or loss. No, the big picture is the future you are creating. For a family person, the big picture is not just one bad moment or one moment of disagreement. No, the big picture is the relationship that is being shaped over time. If you are building a career, the big picture isn't just one good day or one bad day. No, it is the future you are creating. The big picture is learning to see beyond the moment, learning to see how the pieces fit together. As I reflected on the big picture, I realized the great truth that every big picture contains two components, the big components and the small components. The big components are the results, and the small components are the processes that leads to the result. So we have the promotion in the big picture. So also is the preparation that leads to the promotion. We have the graduation and the moments of happiness and joy in the big picture. So also is the studies that leads to the graduation. We have the success, we have the sacrifice, we have the achievement, and we have the discipline that brings about the achievement. So every big picture contains two components, the big component and the small component. But here's the truth. Most people focus only on the big components, ignoring the small components. They want the graduation, they want the success, they want the achievement, but they forget that the small components are the processes that leads to the graduation, the success, and the achievements. So that's truth number one. Every big picture contains two components, the big components and the small component. Now here's the second truth. The small components in the big picture are as important as the big components in the big picture. Now, everybody wants promotion in life, but few people are willing to undertake the preparation that brings about promotion. Everybody wants academic excellence, but few people are willing to imbibe the discipline that brings about academic excellence. Everybody wants a happy marriage life, but few people want the patience, the commitment, and the communication that sustains it. So here's the truth that people who see the big picture know. The small components in the big picture are as important as the big components. So if you want a happy life, you want the good things to happen to you tomorrow, do not forget the small components, because they are the processes that leads to the big components in the big picture. Now here's where it becomes dangerous. When people stop paying attention to the small components in the big picture, the consequences can be enormous. And that brings me to the third truth. When the small components in the big picture are overlooked, the consequences can be disastrous. Let me show you how. In 1986, a rocket called the Challenger was launched in the United States of America. Years of planning had gone into it, billions of dollars were spent, many scientists worked on it, and at first everything seemed ready. Then the countdown began. 10, 9, 8, 1, 0. The rocket was launched into the sky. At first everything seemed fine, until 70 seconds later, the rocket broke apart and about 7 scientists who were on board lost their lives. Now here's the surprising part. The disaster was not traced to the engine of the rocket, it wasn't traced to the fuel tank, but it was traced to something very small called a rubber O-ring, a tiny part of the rocket. Yet when the most tiniest part of the rocket failed, everything went with it. The mission failed, the rocket failed, lives were lost, and at first when I heard of that story, I couldn't stop thinking about it. How could something so small have such an enormous consequences? And then I realized that's how life works. Sometimes the things that cause the biggest disasters in our lives are the things we ignore the most, the things we consider the least. And then it made me wonder, how many people in the world are struggling today because of an O-ring they have ignored in their lives? How many people are struggling because of neglected discipline? How many people are struggling because of laziness disguised in comfort? How many people have failed to grab opportunities because of poor preparation? How many relationships have been damaged because of neglected communication? And how many futures have been affected because of habits that at first seemed insignificant? And then I began to think about our nation, Nigeria. Oftentimes we talk about the big components, the economy, the exchange rates, the infrastructure, the bad government policies. Well, those are important conversations, I know. But what if our problems are more connected to the smaller components? Components like integrity, keeping to our words, doing the right thing even when no one is watching, honesty, respecting system. Because a nation is built the same way our individual lives are built. One decision at a time, everything connects with everything else. As we conclude, let's return to the 3 truths we've learned this afternoon. Every big picture is made up of 2 components, the big component and the small component. The small component is as important as the big components. And finally, when the small components are ignored, the consequences can be disastrous. Let us understand that the future is not built in one dramatic moment. Rather, it is an accumulation of daily habits, decisions made over time. Let us learn to see the big picture, because it is only from there that we can begin to see the connection between today's choices and tomorrow's outcome. So let me leave you with one final question. What is the O-ring of your life? What is that thing you have ignored for too long that is probably the reason why you are where you are today? What is that thing that, if left unchecked, could lead to fatal consequences tomorrow? Think about it and ensure you do something about it. Until next time, this is the fact, revealing the truth.